All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Resilience in Action. This is episode 8. Very lucky to have with us today Bri, who is an Aliveness coach, and more importantly, was the class president of Rex Putnam High School in, what was that? That was
Well,
2000,
class of
wasn't it?
2000, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's been a couple of years. So I was ranked slightly below you in class.
Hey, there's no ranking.
I finished my junior year strong. It was that senior year that got in my
That's
way.
good. Yeah.
But welcome to the podcast. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
You are a beacon of positivity. I've stalked this. I don't know if stalked is the right word to use here, but I've watched you over the years, and you've overcome so much, and you've always done so with such grace. And you're such an example to people who are struggling. Not to say anybody has to suffer any certain way, but I do believe that survival requires some internal effort. And it's been very obvious to me over the years that you've been making that effort in such a way that empowered and inspired me. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah. So I'm just going to jump right into it because your story that we followed for years was beautiful and heartbreaking. I think the most common theme that I've dealt with over the years with people who are contemplating suicide or who are in very dark places is loss.
Mm-hmm.
And loss is across a spectrum. When I teach prevention classes, I always tell people in my own life, I think my wife would be the hardest person for me to lose. I've got 10,000 kids. But my wife would probably be the hardest one, which is probably exactly opposite of my wife, who would probably do better losing me than the kids. I mean, we kind of joke about that, but it's true. And then there's a 13-year-old kid, and the most important thing in their life is their buddy next door or their pet. And that loss is big and impactful. But you have a very unique story. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to be quiet and let you tell your story.
Okay.
Really up to your loss and those events surrounding it.
Sure. Well, speaking to what you were saying about loss, one thing that I feel like I've really learned and has been really highlighted to me, and I guess gifted me with this different lens on the grief experience, is that I discovered in such a rich way that we are all experiencing grief like our entire life and they just happen to be different versions. Like sometimes in conversation, I'll be talking to someone who is a new empty nester and they don't notice it, but they are experiencing this giant form of grief of its transition. So this grief experience is just a massive transition in our life. And a lot of it, I feel like, is attached to these identities that we either claim or they get placed on us. And so this movement through life and life journey is just fascinating to watch people's experiences, because I don't think that people notice how much grief is actually in motion, in process. And we all do it differently. And what was modeled for us young will really impact our life too. It's been a beautiful gift through everything that I did walk through. So I guess we'll just,
if you don't mind, real quick. Yeah. So grief as a gift, can we unpack that just a tiny bit? Because I like the concept. I like to feel that I wouldn't have achieved or accomplished what I have without the trauma that came along the way and that
totally
post-traumatic growth. But talk to that a little bit, if you don't mind, before we get into it, because that's an interesting concept.
I know. And I know that there's I'll say things sometimes and people kind of look at me, raise eyebrows, but I think I've just chosen to take these last handful of years on with the lens and or putting on my helmet of, okay, how can I do this to the best version possible within who I am in this moment? And so my husband died. And I through that death, I experienced such an exquisite, bold, self-sacrificing love that I don't know that it would have been possible for me to have touched that kind of love in myself without the cancer. I feel like it'd be fair to say that I wouldn't have. And within that, the depth of grief, I was willing to face that and embrace that instead of turning my back from it and grow with it. And I just know that with grief and sadness and pain, it's in one hand, we can experience all of this and hold all of this. And we can also still hold, in the other hand, joy and laughter and delight, and they can be coexisting. And for the longest time, I thought my mind and my therapist would help me navigate this because my mind was like black and white, like I'm either this or I'm that. And she kind of helped me reframe and understand like both. I can be experiencing both, and we can live in the gray space. It doesn't have to be the black and the white. And it's uncomfortable at first if you're a black or white thinker, but the more I embrace discomfort, that's such a juicy place in life to be. Also, I feel like we could talk for hours in discomfort, because on the other side of that is just like so much beauty and radness that it is a gift waiting to happen. But people run from the discomfort before they are gifted what's waiting for them to walk through it.
On the mental health side of things, I feel like a life without discomfort, there could be nothing more dissatisfying. I'm reading a book right now, one of my previous guests had on, I don't remember the title off the top of my head, but I'll come back and put it in here as a graphic.
Is it the one with Viktor Frankl?
Gosh, life of me, I don't remember.
That's okay.
But anyways, long story short, that's one of the things that it talks about, the family coming to drop their child off at college. And, they've been the perfect helicopter parents, and that child has been safe and has not been challenged and hasn't known a little risque danger at midnight running around the streets.
Yeah.
That child struggles. And the kids who went out there and maybe did get burned by life just a little bit, got to experience it and get some freedom, they do experience discomfort. They do experience danger in reality, but their ability to experience the rest of life is greatly enhanced. So
right.
Officially took this conversation all the way off course. I apologize. But
That's
that was
okay.
a beautiful explanation. Okay,
Thanks.
let's go back to tell your story, because it unfolded from the outside very slowly, but I would love to hear what it was like on the inside.
Yeah. So we'll just rewind in time. I met my husband, my late husband now, in 2011, I think, or 2010. It's funny how you get older and just dates kind of blur together.
I have no idea where I'm at.
Yeah. And we got married in 2012, and it was one of those sort of relationships that I felt like, oh man, we just kind of covered a lot of bases at the beginning, and I felt like everything was super raw and honest, and like both into personal growth and kind of wanting to be the best versions of ourselves within the marriage. Then we, like, so many little pieces just feel like they were so romantic, almost like my own little love story movie romance. We fell in love on a very specific date in April, and then he ended up proposing the same day the following year, where we fell in love out at Stoller Vineyard.
Are you allowed to say what day? Because
oh yeah, I'm like, what day was it? It was April, April 9th. And so we kind of coined that as Love Day. And anyway, and so then we ended up we wanted to get married that same year. And if you're from Oregon, I guess you don't have to be from Oregon, but we were having a hard time finding like a big enough venue to get married. And a friend posted on Facebook kind of like, hey, looking for a couples, or they were looking for multiple couples that wanted to get married that summer at a farm. So she sent it to me and I applied. Well, it turns out it was for Little People, Big World, but it was like farm edition. If you remember that show at all.
I do.
Yeah. So our wedding was with little people on their farm. Anyway, so like seeing the back end of like how they put reality shows together. I mean, the wedding was real, and it just like happened to be that they filmed and, used different clips leading up to it. And so it was a fun experience and kind of hilarious really to think and look back at. But they were great, and that was a lot of fun. Anyway, so life was good, and we celebrated our 1-year anniversary. We went on a cool trip to Thailand, and fast forward, then in 2014, we had our first daughter. Life felt like it was just, a fairy tale, like everything just was dreamy. And Mike was a home builder, and he built custom homes. When I met him, things were like really low in recession time and kind of nothing was really happening. So he would always joke like, oh, she must really love me because I'm broke and things are not what he wanted them to be. So business was picking up. And then fast forward to, about 2014, we had our second daughter. And no, that's not right. 2016, we had our second daughter. And it was 3 months after that. And at the time, so where we live, it's on this piece of property, and we were living in this like shop that he had built out until we built our house. And anyway, one morning I went to the bathroom, and kind of as I stood up, I noticed some blood on the ground, and I was like, that's strange. Like, that's not my blood. And anyhow, so I asked him about it, which kind of led to this pursuing of, he hadn't been to the doctor in a really long time. And he kind of wanted to brush it off like, oh, well, I mean, maybe I ate something weird, or maybe I had a couple too many glasses of wine, and I'm like, internally, like, I'm very in touch with, I guess, intuition and just like this inner knowing for myself. And so I pushed pretty hard for him to make a doctor's appointment, but he only agreed to go to the doctor's appointment after this out of town golf tournament. So you better believe I made that for like the day that he came back from his golf tournament. And then at that doctor's appointment, he then referred him, after their conversation, referred him to a follow-up appointment to have a colonoscopy. And at that appointment, if you haven't had your colonoscopy, here's your reminder to start getting things checked. And so fast forward, he ended up being told right then at that appointment that yes, you've got polyps and it looks cancerous, and we're sending you. So right straight from his colonoscopy appointment, and he was like coming out of, it's not anesthesia, but whatever maybe it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Okay. I'm like,
from
is that what it was
experience,
called?
they
Yes.
put you
Okay.
down.
Okay. I mean, I knew you're out of it, but anyhow, so then it was like, it just felt like such a whirlwind, because they tell you this information, then you get sent to the hospital to have more testing done like immediately. And so for anyone who doesn't, I'll just put this plug in there. For our bodies and health in general, I've always been very passionate about health and wellness, and I'm not perfect at it, but if your body is giving you a sign or a symbol, our bodies, I feel like, are always trying to communicate with us and give us information, whether it's, like your neck is stiff or you have a headache or the stomach ache. But if these things persist, that is like your body waving its flag to say, please pay attention to me. And when we don't, man, we are choosing a much more challenging road. If we choose fear or putting it off because we don't think that we have time, and I will tell you, it will take up all of your time if you choose to avoid your body telling you and giving the signs and symbols.
Yeah, and age is not, one of our previous guests, Jeremy, was 25 when
Yeah.
he came across a really nasty strain of leukemia.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know. It's just unpredictable. And every day really, I feel like we've heard that since we were young. Every day is a gift. And then when you're faced with actually bigger life stuff, it's like it sinks in real quick. So that first bit of his cancer journey it felt sort of just like a quick passing, because he was diagnosed, they did a surgery, they thought they got it, and he thought he was like good to go, clear. Well, so what happened was the following year, so you do a follow-up colonoscopy and the cancer was back. So at that point, it, it was a little more invasive, and they did he did radiation and he did chemo and he did another surgery eventually in that time period. And with that surgery, he ended up with an ileostomy. And so that one was temporary. So that really, that was a big change in life situation, just because, it changes how you have bowel movements and it changes the whole process of it. And so another gift through that cancer was like my appreciation for body and function amplified on enormous levels, because, I have the gift of going to the bathroom and going the way that God made me to go in a toilet very easily. And it's ridiculous. And I remember making a video about this, like during that time, like, you guys be so grateful if you get to go just poop normal. And I know it's like silly, but it's not, because man, in watching his body, deteriorate and just not be able to function in the way that it once used to, like one of my biggest fears a long time ago now was, oh my gosh, what if I couldn't walk one day? And I feel ridiculous saying that out loud, but that was real for me back then. But as things progressed for him, I just kept thinking like, and this was part of my own mental strategy and training was, okay, well, what, like, it's like my mind was able to expand of like, well, what can we still do? What are the possibilities still available to us? And there, I didn't like just walk into that. That took a period, because there was a period during this cancer that I was very like angry and resentful, and it just felt like agitating. And like I took on that role of like, oh, we're the victim of cancer. Like cancer is doing this to us.
Yeah, so you're supposed to have a lot of years with your young spouse when you get
Yeah.
married.
Yeah.
You're signing up for this real long-term adventure.
Right. And you dream and you scheme of what life is going to be and your plans and goals together. Anyway, so that was definitely a challenging period. I would say that was probably 2016, 17. Yeah, probably like 2000, late 2017. And I ended up going to this faith conference. And it was a little bit out of my comfort zone. And through that weekend, though, it was again talking about leaning into that discomfort. That was one of these like very monumental moments in my journey in my life that unzipped me, that in a way that transformed who I became showing up in life for Mike, for my girls, for myself. And what that conference did for me was I ended up like having this moment of clarity and realized, oh my gosh, like I am not owning who I am and how I'm being. And I ended up writing this really, really long letter to him. Some of it was apologizing, but some of it was just like really recognizing areas that I wanted to show up differently. And from that weekend moving forward, I had this conversation with myself. And in the conversation, it was in my closet. And sometimes these conversations are like mixed with prayer, but like kind of to myself. And I don't know, it just is this swirly kind of chaotic mess. But it makes sense in my heart when it's happening. I just basically said to myself, okay, I need to be willing to show up as my best self, as my best version in full capacity each and every day for him, for my girls, for myself, so that I fast forward won't look back and have regrets. And I knew that my capacity and my energy might change each day, and my fullness might look different from day to day. But if I could go to bed, lay on my pillow and think, okay, I gave it my all, then that was enough. And that was who I wanted to like be working towards. And that right there, if you can have that kind of conversation with your life and your life and yourself, and that commitment and telling yourself, okay, I'm going to give it my all, like each and every morning, it just like grants you this permission to live more freely, and knowing that it's you yourself. And like for me, it's me, myself, and God, knowing, okay, I put it out on the table. There's nothing left in that day.
Those experiences are so universal with people who survive, become
Yeah.
hopeful, become optimistic, and make something of it. Like everybody that's been on the show has had that moment.
Yeah.
And in this particular instance, you really, in your case, through the help of God, and you found yourself, and you were able to lean on yourself just for a second. That's
Yeah.
very similar to my kind of deciding to pull it together after war a few times
Right.
and
Yeah.
try to make a go at being like a family guy, which I didn't see in my youth that I would ever make
Mhm.
it there.
Right.
But
But
yeah,
that's so beautiful.
that's wonderful. So keep going. Sorry, I
Yeah,
yet
that's
again
good.
have sidelined us, but
No, it's good. Well, let's see. So then with the cancer journey, it was just challenging because he was trying to accept like how his body was working at that point and running his business. And I think we were coming up on, he was going to be building a Street of Dreams house kind of a little bit after that. So he ended up with a surgery to reverse it. So, I mean, like the dirty details of a reversal is, and they had already removed a lot of his colon. So the urgency to go to the bathroom becomes much more obvious. Like your sphincter is just not as strong to hold things so that you can always make it to the bathroom. So he knew that going into it, but it was like a really big deal that he wanted that normalcy. And it's like normal, such a funny word too, after you go
yeah.
through things, because it's like make believe. I notice people in the grocery stores with such a different lens now. and thinking like if it's someone in a wheelchair and it's like my heart wants to extend and offer, can I reach that for you? Because there's just this normalcy. Our world and our society is not set up to make things convenient for people that have for sure disabilities. And it's so frustrating to me. And we take it for granted. And it's just is a real bummer.
There was one of the things I had to come to grips with. I lost a good chunk of the functional capacity of my left leg,
Mhm.
and then still played law enforcement and still was doing mountain search and rescue and all the stuff I want to do with my life, and still playing
Yeah.
army, and then nearly like severed my left arm in a incident. And when the doctor came to me and said, "Hey, you're going to have to find a new career. Like if you get in a fight with somebody, we're going to have
Right.
to remake you. Like
Yeah.
you're very kind of fragile." And I'm like this huge guy. I've always been athletic and like
Yeah.
way out there. And to be in a state where I have no feeling in my left foot at all. So my balance sucks.
Right.
So I mean, I'm going downstairs, going
Yeah.
upstairs sometimes.
Scary.
And that little limitation, I'm still so free to do so much. I feel you trying to empathize with people who can't. In my worst day, I can hike wherever I want to hike. I can still kind of climb stuff, not safely.
Sure. But
To
it's like
It
it impacts
changes.
everything you
Yeah,
do.
it changes a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And your mindset too, because unless you're willing to stay current with, I mean, even if you're trying to stay current with like the changes happening in your body, it goes back to that identity piece of we're so attached to, in a way, taking for granted just our freedom in the world, but also in our bodies and how we function. And then, I mean, it's like when you get a sore throat, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. And then you appreciate having a clear throat again after having a cold. But it's like minor, but having like gratitude for our body is so beneficial. Like even if you just practice gratitude for your body and your function every day, like and physically, like I talk to myself a lot, but I'm like, thank you, body, for just being willing to move and work out and do the things that I want. I mean, I'm not where I want to be necessarily with all my goals, but at a minimum, having gratitude to my body, like because on an energetic level, it's like our body is always intaking and holding on to things. And I think also with Mike's cancer, I feel like some of that, like illness and disease, I just have a personal belief around that things multiply when we are not in a healthy state in our mind, that things can become worse very quickly. And I feel very passionate about that. So when we can practice gratitude to ourselves, like it's so beneficial.
You're saying so many wonderful things. I think we should stomp foot on the gratitude for your body piece too. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you're at
No.
in the midst of any state. Like
Yeah.
I hit a pretty heavy state, especially after my shoulder repair, because like the first time in my life, I'm on a couch.
Right.
And just, what's natural to happen when you don't do anything and you still consume food. I got really, really heavy. And I
Hmm.
had worked really hard to not be heavy after been over 300 pounds when I was younger. And it just kind of started going away from me and I kind of felt powerless. But I'm like, no, wait a second. I did the same thing. Like, hey, I want to go after physical therapy. And I was really excited. I did pass out on top of my wife, who's like
Oh,
five
no.
foot. She's like 5'2". The first time I tried to extend my arm, boom, gone.
Oh,
But
gosh.
but yeah, to everybody out there, because that can be a big cause of people's lack of hope too, is their lack of self-esteem and their lack of appreciation for the body
Yeah.
that they have and
Yeah.
the face that we have or whatever.
I know. It's so easy to pick things apart or like sit in that pool of just like and just spin out on things. And it's so I don't know. I feel like it's so valuable too, especially like having kids trying to like break off any generational stuff and help coach them into the mindset of strength and personal power. I think that is so powerful.
That's beautiful. I'll keep that segue as well. So I
Yeah.
apologize, but that was really nice. It's good for people to
Yeah.
hear. It is really important to take a second to try to appreciate yourself and not try to actually appreciate yourself. You know
Hmm.
what's really nice, Bri, is breathing.
Yeah.
Like I do this thing right now in the morning where I do my PT first, then I practice some Spanish for 45 minutes. And I've been in the habit of doing it
Yeah.
just at my living room table. And so recently I'm like, no, I live in the forest. I'm going to go out on my deck and
Yeah.
feel the sun on my face and just breathe. And
So good.
yeah, other than the wildfires right now, which have been nasty up in
Oh,
Wisconsin,
dang. Yeah.
But it's just wonderful to breathe. Breathing is so nice. It feels so
Yes,
good to take air in and let it back out.
it does. And it's so powerful. I mean, like the science behind breathing, but I personally feel like it's so challenging to like be intentional and mindful to make time for that, especially like that deep belly breathing. That can like nervous system is one thing I've been working really hard on this last like year and a half for myself because fast forward, it became really dysregulated after like the death and grief. I didn't know it at the time, but my body was doing such a good job of just keeping me in survival and maintaining what needed to be done, but recognizing, how many levels of support our bodies require to function on our highest level, like breathing is so useful. But it's like that deep, like in your belly breathing. But that will help. Like if people are listening that get anxious or kind of just have that like chaotic energy, deep belly breathing or even like the groaning sound like helps yank it down. I can't recommend that enough. So
There's
helpful.
I have taught something for years. I taught positive psych in the military.
Mm,
And when you catch yourself in a catastrophizing place, or your negative thinking is just going overboard with you, you can stop your body in an instant from its focus on any of these other like
yeah,
non-atomic things by
yeah.
depriving it of that atomic function of being able to take breath in. So we would tell people take a very deep, big belly breath in and hold it just longer than it's comfortable. And
Mhm.
your body stops everything else. It can't worry anymore about the crazy thing that
Right.
actually isn't potentially fatal, that it's actually trying to respond to as if it were fatal, because the new most close and important thing to your brain is breath. It needs oxygen. And you
Yeah.
do that 3 times in a row and you've disrupted everything. And there's some vagus nerve stimulation in
Like
in the later science. I was just talking to a CBT therapist who practices exactly that along vagus nerve stuff, and
yeah,
showed me like 3 or 4 ways to manipulate the vagus nerve to
yeah.
interrupt bad cognitive times.
I
Anyways,
love that.
sorry.
Yeah. So powerful. I
Breathing
mean,
is and that's taking control of your body. Your body stops for a second and goes, "Oh yeah, I
yeah,
work for you."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Not allowing the monkey mind to just spin and try to take over
Yeah, yeah.
becomes chaotic.
Go run up the tree when there's nothing that can even chase you up the tree.
Yeah, totally.
That email is not going to attack you. It's
No.
just an email. Okay,
Yes.
keep going.
Yes.
Back to
Okay. So let's see. I think that puts us about 2018-ish. Well, after all that radiation and chemo treatments. It's kind of like I feel like I follow people that are going through these process right now of cancer and you'll see them post like, "Oh, this is round 23 of chemo." Like at that point it's like I feel like I just lost count because there's so many appointments and we were kind of like one of my strategies was living between the appointments. And so prior to cancer, we would make plans. We would like, I don't know, set vacation dreams and life would just felt fluid. Well, once you start experiencing, I feel like it'd probably be fair to say for most illness and health challenged people, it's almost like you start living between these doctor's appointments of, okay, we can plan between here and here. And especially if you're having infusions or medications or radiation, you don't know how you're going to feel after some of those appointments. And so you can't really bank on feeling great or being your new version normal. So that just became like way of life. And that took a little bit to wrap my head around and that experience of like my friends still get to make these plans and they're out doing, whatever. I'd get invitations to go do things or meet up, but it started to become very just like challenging because it was this inner conflict of I really want to go do that and I miss my old life and that's not where I am anymore. And so that word and actually has become so valuable in my language because it helps me reframe things or it helps me see and practice the gratitude of where I am right in this moment because that was really tough. And then as time progressed, it's like that year mark again. He ended up being clear in that next colonoscopy, but then he started having pains and some of these other things in his body just were not right. And so he got some blood work, and I don't remember the exact time frame, but I feel like it was like a year and maybe call it a year and 3 months or so when this started showing up in this pain. Anyway, so the blood work anyway confirmed that the cancer was back again, which that just felt like such a big blow because thinking, my gosh, like this little beast is not going to go away. So, in conversation with the surgeon that we loved, she was phenomenal. He asked her, he said, well, if this was your husband, where would you want him to go seek medical support? So we ended up being in Texas down at MD Anderson, and they're amazing and sharp and just, it's like, I mean, I loved our Providence team that we had here in Oregon, but that team in Texas was outstanding. It's like that next level. So there's a lot of appointments and going back and forth with Texas. And at the time, our girls were little. So it was kind of this juggle of,
How old are they
gosh.
at that time then? Three,
So
three
they,
and more?
yeah. So yeah, about 5 and 3,
Oh my
about.
goodness.
Yeah.
So little. Just
Yeah.
babies.
So little. And, like my mama heart was so torn because here I want to be super supportive of my husband. And I also want to be experiencing and not missing any moment with these little cuties. And it still is uncomfortable for me to ask for help, but it was like necessary that I needed
Right.
like I couldn't do this by myself, be two places at one time. And anyway, I'm so lucky to have great family. So Texas was wild because where this tumor that they identified was touching so much, and it was like wrapped around his sciatic nerve, and that was what was causing a lot of pain like down his legs. And they couldn't just go in, like they have different options, and they could have like tried an ablation, but with an ablation you wouldn't know what exactly it's going to blow up. So it might blow up the sciatic nerve to help you walk or not. It's like it was Russian roulette in a way. So the recommendation was to remove it. Well, with removing it, there was a very intense like radiation protocol. And he ended up living down in Texas for, it was over a month, like between a month and 2 months. And, I mean, my older daughter, McKenna, will still talk about how he missed her 6th birthday because he was down there in that time period. We ended up going to see him eventually, but it's just like those little moments where you try to support and navigate as best you can, but you don't know the parts that are going to stick for your kids and the impact that makes and the ripple down the road or what have you. So this surgery was wild. It ended up being like, gosh, I want to say like 22 hours, a 22-hour surgery. And it was like 4 different surgeons, and like they had to remove part of his coccyx and his prostate. And so this tumor was just touching so much. So anything this tumor touched, they had to remove it. And so they removed all of these pieces, and then they ended up taking part of his abdomen, folding it in half, and then putting it in his pelvic floor because they had taken away so much that if you didn't, then blood would just pool. So at the time when this doctor is explaining all this, I'm thinking, how is he even going to walk after this? Like my mind is not even understanding or comprehending how any of this is going to play out. And he was very confident. And he is a phenomenal surgeon and doctor. And Mike was so determined because when this surgery fell, it was in 2019 and it was in August, and he was determined to get back from Texas in time for McKenna's first day of school because there's going to be first day of kindergarten. And that only left like, gosh, I want to say 2 weeks,
Jeez.
like we can have 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, how are we going to get on an airplane? How are you going to, I'm like thinking, do we need to find a jet to lay you down to get, I tried, I looked into a lot of things, but he did it. And he was so determined. And through all of this, some friends started a Facebook group, and it was called the Harn Good Vibe Tribe. And so we would do updates and people would send in messages. And it still gives me goosebumps to this day. Like when I think about like monumental moments of feeling so supported and so exquisitely loved. And that was one of many time periods like during his surgery, and people's outpouring of messages and support and sending gifts. And I mean, he had Army brothers show up at the hospital and sit with me during surgery, and my dad and my brother and his sister and her best friend and one of his guys that was working for him at the time. so loyal and beautiful. Just like the most beautiful pieces of humanity in that time period that I got to experience. And so I would never, ever wish cancer upon anyone, but I would pray that everyone gets to feel that like version of love and being so poured and supported into and on is just, I don't know. I just hope that for everybody because that just like amplified the hope and that amplified like my own inner desire of like, yeah, of course we're going to make the best of this and work hard at this. And whatever version comes out of this after this surgery, like we're going to give it our all. And we did. But that time period of 2019 was so, so hard. Oh my gosh.
But I want to, yeah, if you don't mind, real quick, as a reminder to everybody,
Yeah.
sometimes we feel anxious about reaching out or like we don't know what to say or what's the right thing. But
Yeah.
I think in your
Yeah.
case, it made all the difference that people just had the
Yeah.
courage to go and be supportive however they could.
Yes.
That's really cool.
100%. Yes. And it is uncomfortable. And that's a great point. And I experienced that. And there was friends along the way that I had expectation of. And that's another like life lesson that has been super powerful for me is expectations in other people when you're going through something hard. And people that you have like people will shock you. The people that lean in and show up and stand in your mud with you are going to be the ones that you least expect it. And some of the ones that you would anticipate being those rocks, like aren't necessarily emotionally available to do that. And your relationship might not have experienced that version of emotion with these friendships until you hit these points. And so I just want to say to that, practice a little gentleness because that was hard for me. Like I was angry about it that some of my friends were not leaning in or reaching out. And then fast forward, recognizing they just don't have capacity. They are not at a place in their life and it might stir up their own fears or their own discomfort or they just can't. And so practicing the grace and a little forgiveness towards those friends, because it's not personal, but I was taking it personally. And it hurt. It was confusing because it felt so lonely at the time. Like, oh my gosh, now in this version of after the surgery, Mike, like the medications, just I don't want to say he was a monster, but it just was like a very agitated version of him for a while. Rightfully so. I mean, anyone who just had their body rearranged and now trying to figure out life again and probably in so much pain. So that was definitely a season of like, I'll just speak to marriage in this little portion of it of like here's another commitment I made to myself during that season. So I wouldn't sleep with my ring on. I just preferred to take it off each night. But it became like this very intentional moment every morning when I'd put my ring on. It was like I would tell myself, I'm committing to this day. I'm committing to loving him, the best version that I can. And even to the point where I started a journal, like just a devoted journal of writing down like one thing I liked about him every single day because it just was so difficult in that season to have that like easy breezy lens of love. And I'm so swoony over you. It was so difficult. And doing that practice and committing to myself, like I was committing to myself so I could commit to him to show up as my best self. And like making that one statement each and every day helped me change my lens to see more joy, to experience more lightness. In that year, I remember on my Instagram account, was like, okay, this year I'm going to like seek out joy every single day. And I took a picture every single day and like, it was almost therapeutic and it was just very useful for me. But that journal and that intention of seeking joy made all the difference. And so when we're in challenge, it is possible. So we can have the hard and experience the joy. It might not be a full day's worth that we would ideally like. However, it is possible to work at it and cultivate it and help that grow, like planting those seeds so that your garden like does take over. And eventually I was like, okay, we're in a better place. And I still would practice that. But if you're in a hard season of marriage, that was a really helpful tool for me. And then fast forward, we ended up starting a journal that we would pass back and forth. Just saying like, I appreciate like the things that maybe we wanted to say, but it was a sweet exchange.
It was I was going through some professional challenges right around that time where I realized I probably shouldn't be a police officer anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
what the heck am I going to do with my life? And I was kind of I was in some pretty good doldrums from that because I had not gotten it. So I'd really hard tried to apply for some police chief jobs that would require less. And I was getting second place like every time. And in the background of that, you were always on Facebook. Like it was a interesting thing. Every time I would pull up Facebook, there was this positive thing for the day. And I knew what you were going through. And there was a time where I had an honest professional sit down with myself and said, hey, my biggest worry here is, gosh, am I going to have to go move somewhere else to find a high paying job to take care of my family at or above the middle class standard in the US? And here you're going through this and you're celebrating it. And I was like beating myself up just about, my gosh, I got to get a standard of living for my family. So that time, the positive that you were showing, that just wasn't for you either. I mean, that was for people around you. It was an example to people to take a moment and put perspective back in life. So that I remember there was one particular day where I was reading of one of your challenges, and man, that's that's resilience. That's what I need to pause here and try to take in a moment and think of what's important. I've got my family at home. They love me, and it's
Yeah.
even if I was driving Uber, they'd still love me. So, anyways, just want to let you know that you spread some joy. It's interesting. You'll never know how far you spread it and how many people you touched in the midst of your own struggle. So,
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah.
I feel like that's something that I'm trying to like step into more this year is like recognizing, and I feel this way actually with everyone. We're just the vessel. We are the vessel of whatever it is that is our life assignment. And obviously, our life assignments can change and evolve. Like recognizing right now, okay, I am the vessel of like wanting to amplify love and joy through the midst of challenge, like whatever that might be, and helping people understand like, oh, I can choose to see this differently. I can choose to see this through a lens of love or compassion or gentle, like whatever lens you want, but that we have to make that choice and then commit to ourselves through that choice. But just like you were the vessel, like you are the vessel for your life assignment right now, making impact and sharing hope and courage and everything else that you're doing. So I feel like it's such a fun conversation to me because what we see in each other, it's like, it's already in us. And we're like these mirrors to one another of, oh, whether it's something we really like about someone or someone that's like a little like makes us feel sandpapery, itchy, like that's something that needs to be addressed too of like, ooh, like why do I feel a little about that? But it's so cool when we just like walk through life with more curiosity and gentleness. One, we can learn so much about ourselves, but then we can also learn so much from other people that's the sweet stuff. So good.
Okay. Sorry. Distraction again.
All right. So that puts us back after his surgery. So McKenna, he made it to her first day of kindergarten, which was like such a big deal and big day. And that was awesome. And then, things seemed like they were getting better. Like he was gaining some strength and he was able to walk without a walker, which blew my mind. Like in my mind, prior to the surgery, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to need a walker, maybe a wheelchair. Like I have no idea, but he was so determined. And like his mental grit was just phenomenal. Like I would say he was radically optimistic with all of it. I mean, he also thought he was going to outlive. He would tell the doctors, he would be like, well, I mean, my job is just to live longer or long enough so that the medical catches up to me so that we can like sort this out. Which, at that point in time, I mean, I felt like I was a very positive and optimistic person, but also I'm like, this does not feel super realistic. Like our experiences on reality feel very different. But there was a point in time with all of that I recognized, instead of being frustrated with how he was intaking what I perceived as like more negative cancer news, that I just needed to jump on his train and support that and be all in. And just in general, like that phrase of being all in on life has had a great impact in my soul as well, because there's things like as time passes and this concept of time and recognizing time was starting to give me like anxious feels and like, oh my gosh, are we going to have enough time? Is there like the time between, like, oh my gosh, I guess the best thing I can make sense of it to be relatable if people haven't experienced this sort of thing It's like you get married, and I feel like that's a very specific timestamp. And then you have a kid, and that's another very specific timestamp in our journey. And so then you start looking back, and it's like, oh, well, they're growing up so fast, and like it's just cruising by. Well, it's like it does cruise by. But then when you add in illness, it's, just the speed feels like it's on super fast. Like there's no brakes to it. So now I'm trying to remember where we were even.
Post-surgery, medication,
So he's
difficult.
getting,
Yeah.
getting stronger, and things were feeling like, okay, I think we're like in like an okay spot. And then COVID happened. So then COVID comes on and, kind of makes these checkup appointments where I'm dropping him off. And that just felt, it was strange for everybody, but that just felt like this added layer of loneliness for these follow-up appointments and scans. Well, anyway, so fast forward, eventually these like pains start coming back. And in that surgery, one of the head surgeon, Dr. Chang, had come out 2 times. The first time his energy was like strong. He's standing there giving us the update. And that had probably been after like 8 hours or something. And then fast forward when he came out and he sat down, and just like his energy was very different. Well, he had told me in that moment, we got the specimen, we're sampling some other spots, but what we don't know is if the cancer, if there's like cells that have moved along the sciatic nerve into other lymph nodes, we won't know that. Time will tell. So essentially, that was his sort of warning of very much saying, this is very possible that the cancer will come back. So cancer does come back. And the amount of pain that Mike went through was just mind blowing to watch someone experience that and know that there's nothing physically that you can do to help support or like alleviate any of that pain is so heartbreaking as a partner. And also wanting to like just make things better for him. That part felt lonely because my friends couldn't understand that. They weren't going through a relationship where one person is in such pain morning to night, like waking up in the middle of the night. And after that surgery, he had a permanent ileostomy bag and a colostomy bag. So like at nighttime, you would hook up, and for the urostomy bag, you would hook up this tube and then attach it to this bigger pouch so that you don't have to get up in the middle of the night to go drain it. But that really changed a lot of life for him to get used to. And, then your mind is sort of always thinking like, okay, well, where's the bathroom if this starts filling up? Because, just another compassion note, like a lot of people can actually, I'll say, I don't know if hiding is the right word, but disguise their bags. And a lot of people actually experience these with all sorts of gastroenterology kind of like issues. But if you have gas, like these bags will like get big. So all of a sudden you won't feel it necessarily, like you won't feel the gas coming out of your intestines, but just thinking, like from a business perspective, say you're in a client meeting, all of a sudden your bag starts growing. So it was a big change in life for him to get used to that, and all of us really, because to be more sensitive around that. I remember we made a video one night in the bathroom talking about just, it was just on my heart to like want to share about awareness around ostomies, and that you can still have a beautiful, great life, but it requires a lot of patience and adjusting. And so I started learning how to cut the little thing so perfect. And like, I didn't have nurse qualifications before this, but by the end of it, I felt like I could like cruise through a lot of nursing school if I had chose to. So that portion of life just was like big adjustment. And also like, I'm going to tap into faith and just being like deeply guided. One of my daughters once asked me about, I was just driving along the road and she's like, Mom, what's your testimony story? And I just paused and I thought about that. And so there would be times in the middle of the night that like say medications wouldn't sit well or something he ate. Well, it's very easy for your colostomy bag to fill up, and not just fill up, but like explode because there's nowhere for it to go. So that makes for a very unfortunate situation if you're sleeping in the middle of the night and then you wake up and you pull your covers up and there's just like shiz everywhere. Well, Anyway, it's so unpleasant and so challenging, but I bring that up because it's one of these like moments that during this particular season where the cancer was back and he was in a lot of pain and these explosions were happening because we couldn't get them like the pain meds right and the chemo right and trying everything. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and I was the most gentle, patient, person. And that was not my human version self. Like that was Jesus's ability to step into my soul and help me clean him, wash the sheets, help get him in the shower, like remake the bed, get everything set up in the middle of the night with love and compassion versus anger and irritation and exhaustion, because the morning's still going to come quick and these girls are still young and want my attention. And I still needed to help him get ready for his work day. So like I was willing to, I mean, prayer's been a part of my life for a long time, but in these moments, I also flipped to gratitude because I had already trained my mind to see the difference of, okay, I I can choose to be angry about this and be exhausted, or I can choose to say, oh my gosh, I am so grateful that we have a washer and a dryer right now and that we are fortunate enough to have extra sheets that I can just put these on and here we go. I did it with, like, I look back and I'm like, that was such a gift that Holy Spirit just like met me there in those moments and guided that. So I told my daughter, I was like, I experienced Jesus's love being like, I was the vessel that I got to like experience that and pour out because my human version self, I don't think that's a normal thing to show up with that amount of gentleness and love and not honestly and not like be like wanting to throw up because it was nasty.
No,
It was
I had
bad.
I had small kids, and my gag reflex was pretty automatic. Like,
Yeah.
and I can imagine being around I'm sure the smell, the difficulty, and then to be
Yeah.
able to be that gracious and awesome in it. I believe absolutely that the Lord walked through you, and
Yeah.
like I believe that without any shadow of a doubt. I mean, this you have to let that happen still. But this entire episode is faith and perspective, and that seems to be the two things that you brought to the trauma fight was faith
Yeah.
and perspective. And
Yeah.
obviously it was the right two tools to take with you, because
Totally.
there are times where alcohol is not the correct tool. And a
Yes.
lot of
Yes.
people, that's the escape, or
Yeah.
something that's unhealthy is the escape, and it doesn't lead to a more holistic relationship, and especially doesn't help with trauma and
Yeah.
difficulty, especially in the time, in the moment. So
Yeah. 100%.
this is what we teach
Yeah.
a lot of veterans, to find what you found instead of these toxic habits that
Yeah. Yeah.
just do the exact opposite. Anyways,
Well, and along those lines, like I remember probably in that 2017 period, 2000 between 17 and 18. Like I remember with you bringing up alcohol is a good reminder. I remember pouring glasses of wine at night and being like, okay, I would rather not feel like it was intentional too. I was like, I'd rather not feel what I'm feeling right now because this feels so hard and icky and I would prefer that over what I'm experiencing. And so even in that, that's in recognizing like that's a very slippery slope and a dangerous place to be if you're not choosing to feel all the feels and experience all of it. And I knew that and I was mindful of it and recognized like, okay, this is not actually going to help anything. And I wasn't in a place where I was concerned about it, but in knowing like, oh, this is not my best self. But in that moment, I will say was a time period of recognizing like open my lens of wanting to be compassionate towards people that are alcoholics and drug addicts because I was experiencing that feeling of I would rather feel something else than what I'm feeling. And in that moment, recognizing like, ooh, I think I can understand how that pain can escalate. It's like that emotional pain and the discomfort. So I didn't go down that road, but it gives me a lot of gentleness towards people that struggle with it or if it was modeled for them. Like that was a whole another podcast, right? But
yes, yeah. I mean,
it's
I
so powerful.
on the 12th episode, I'll be talking about my own life. I mean, I've had a life of, some cool stuff, but my whole entire past goes back to my childhood, where I was raised very poorly and
Right.
I was abused. And Yeah, I was abused by somebody who had just gone down this winding road south into this terrible place. And I know there was a decent human behind there somewhere. And I think not I think, I know for a fact we're all decent
Yeah.
people somewhere deep down inside. But I never really got to meet that decent person. And the person that I did meet is the one that set me off on my own road, talking about that next generation of trauma. That's my whole life goal, is to protect these 4 kids from that generational trauma and
Yeah.
to make it end here.
Right. You're doing it. You're doing it, brother.
Well, baby steps, just like you.
Hey,
So
yeah,
let's get
that
back to your
counts.
story. I'm sorry. We've actually answered all the questions in a non-sequential order that I ask anyways.
Well, perfect.
But keep going.
All right. So I feel like that, this kind of as time is progressing with Mike's cancer and recognizing things are not getting better. In fact, things felt like they were getting worse. And this tumor was kind of growing on the backside of his back. Like you could start to see the bulge of it. So at this point, he was using a walker and his office was in our shop. So he would drive from the front of our property over to the back and he would use a cane to get up the stairs. So we had placed a walker at the top of the stairs and he would keep one in his car to like navigate because that's where his office was. And I remember even calling like elevator companies to see like, what would that look like? Like, what is the possibility? Do we need to put an elevator in? I don't know. Because he was so focused and driven on, I'm going to beat this. And so I was on that train and I'm like, well, then how can we continue to make this work? But that pain got worse and we had a phenomenal pain doctor who did his best to try to help manage all of that for him, but it was a lot of trial and error and we tried being in trials for him to see what would and he just wasn't a candidate for a lot of it. And so let's see, he ended up passing away January 18th, 2022. And it was November 18th, I believe, was like the last, we went to this fundraiser for our girls' school. And one thing I would do in this time period is I would sit in my closet and I journal every morning and I pray every morning. In that time period, I was really diligent on and disciplined on like meditating, but like visualizing how I was going to be performing these next steps with him. So like prior to him using a walker, it's like I would visualize how I was going to show up if when the time came for him to be using a walker, visualizing that next step of how I was going to show up if he needed to be in a wheelchair and like all these forward things, not from a negative perspective, but more of like, I'm going to allow myself to visualize this so I can already be prepared to show up as her in that moment when that time comes. Because we do not, here's a thing that is on that grief topic. We do not know when we say goodbye to certain parts of us or certain experiences. We don't get the like little memo saying, hey, in a week, you're no longer going to be able to walk down those stairs. Or, hey, in 2 months, you're no longer going to be able to just like swoop your kid up and hug them. It's going to be standing only. And so Mike was experiencing a lot of these like last times without even, there was no warning. They just sort of happened. And so he was experiencing a lot of these very painful goodbyes physically that that he wasn't great about talking about because I think it in his mind he was still wanting to beat all of this. So it's like an avoidance and it's almost as if he allowed himself to experience that grief and loss, then he was giving his power away to the cancer. So he didn't want to do that. But from the outside, watching this, again, my perspective just grew and my lens was enhanced because I recognize that on deep levels with having children and parents that are still alive and just people around me thinking, okay, well, we just don't know. And that in itself, I don't want to give the perception that I'm just always thinking like, oh, everyone's dying and I'm dying and it's all the last goodbye. It's just like, let's really be intentional about our experiences because it happens once and in the next experience, if you're granted another one, like that person's a new version of themselves and other things have changed and you're older, like it just keeps going. So that was a really interesting time period because we were not experiencing this, like we were experiencing the same thing, but my intake was very different and my processing was very different than his. So November 18th, we went to this fundraiser. And I had already visualized like how we were going to make it up this ramp into this event center. And like, so I'm cruising around, pushing him with my high heels up this, but I was able to show up with like happiness and gratitude and joy because I had already visualized that that's who I was going to be that night and that I was doing it because I got to do that. It was a gift. It wasn't like, oh, I have to push him up in a wheelchair and I have to be ahead of him with this walker and I have to be the one driving. It was, I get to. And I just, that took a while to like really just like, that is my mental mindset. But in that earlier phase of cancer, that wasn't. I would be like, we have to go to this doctor's appointment and we have to do this now because of the cancer. But as time progressed, it was like, oh, we get to go to the doctor's appointment. And that means we get to, because that means we still have time on our side. So it was this flip of language that I think is so powerful because when we start to shift that, it really affects like how your experiences are because it's going from like resentful to, okay, the expectation drops a little bit and like you just get to be more present and practice receiving whatever might be joyful in that moment. I'm not saying it's not hard still, but you get to take those little pieces away. So that night, after that night, he was in so much pain and that tumor just kept growing that he pretty much was in bed from November 18th until January 18th, pretty much. We were trying to get him into this trial and my dad, he's the coolest, and he brought over his minivan, took the back seats out. And so we maneuvered Mike from the bedroom and we got him in the wheelchair. We wheeled him out to the van. My dad had a mattress out there. We put like this tarp down so we could slide him in, slid him in so we could take him to the doctor's appointment because he couldn't sit because where this tumor was, it was just like excruciating for him to sit upright. Like, so his lay down option only or standing. And he would have these marks on his hands from like gripping the walker so tight and even like sores on his heels from standing so much that he ended up having to do all these doctor's appointments for his feet in the middle of all this. And he had just finished that year. Oh my God, it's just so wild. His determination and grit. In 2021, he did the Street of Dreams and he had finished that up in September. And so if you think about the timeline of finishing up the Street of Dreams house and he wanted to be present as all these people are walking through the Street of Dreams house, talk about the build and everything, like he was smoked by the end of that. And so that was September. And then he died that following January. So, I mean, like his mental mindset and determination is impactful just because I watched all of that and thought, wow. And he would probably only spoke about half of it, like he did a lot of it silently, even though he was trying to be vulnerable and share and transparent. But a lot of it, I think he had his own silent struggle with that pain. And anyway, so another incredible, here's just a lesson in like how to show up for people. So he doesn't get accepted for these trials and basically we're like pain managing at this point. And in December, it was like, I don't know, nearing New Year's Eve. And he was just starting to act a little bit differently. And sometimes acting differently was some signs of a urine infection or UTI. And so with a urostomy, you don't have the same signs as if you can go to the bathroom normally, because oftentimes there'll be discomfort associated with a UTI, but not when you have a urostomy. So the scary part is, and so this is good information if you have, just people in your life, but especially as people get older, like parents, and noticing like it's almost like signs of hallucination, like dementia start to show up and people seem a little bit like out of their mind. Well, the infection can cross over the blood barrier in the brain. And so it starts to like they start saying very strange things and almost like start to look off. So that's just a little keep in your back pocket with aging parents or just people around you. Some people are not as in tune with their bodies to notice like, oh, I have some discomfort when I'm going to pee. So anyway, so that he was starting to do some of that stuff and I was like, oh gosh, we're going to have to get him to the hospital. So I ended up calling an ambulance. Like I got my girls somewhere else so that they didn't have to experience that again, because there was a handful of times where, ambulance would come and they would experienced that, and that it's so hard just to protect. You can't
Yeah.
protect it all. And it's just interesting, their own experience through that for a while. Like hearing an ambulance would be very triggering or activating for them. And now I feel like they're at a better place with that and can kind of like, they're good about like, I hope everyone's okay. Let's say a little prayer for where the ambulance is going versus like this sort of panic of what's happening. So we get Mike to the hospital right before New Year's Eve, and we stay there and they run tests, but we're like in the emergency room and there's really no room or space for him to have a room. And so we're kind of in the hall and he is just like just sort of out of his mind and like just saying wild things like, honey, you need to go serve the dinner at the restaurant, and like just things that just didn't make any sense. And
Right.
so I was anticipating, yes, it's a UTI and who knows what else. Well, so we finally get into a room and tests are done. And I mean, if you've had that sort of experience where you're just sort of waiting, it's just a long process in the hospital, in the emergency room. So after all these tests and like the next day, they kind of say, yes, the cancer is spreading. And there basically wasn't anything to do except try to be as comfortable as possible. And at one point I had gone home, like we had gotten that information, and I didn't stay the night, maybe the second night when we got the information. And we ended up meeting with a couple social service gals. And when we were meeting, and she's like, Mike, do you want to tell her what you told us earlier? And so he said yes. And then she shared with me, she's like, well, he doesn't have any more fight. He's done. And I was like, oh, okay. It was shocking because that was the first time he was like, okay, I'm not going to beat like it just was a very like he had enough. And obviously I don't know what that feels like because it was in his body, but watching it was energetically, there was times that he would get these like major pain surges at night, or even these like crazy bloody noses where it's just, and like my body like took on like this also shared pain, even though I know it was like a drop in the water compared to what he was experiencing. But I tried to be so connected and in tune with all of it that I think my body just energetically was trying to like support and match that. So that was just a very surreal moment. And I remember walking to my car because then I'm thinking, okay, how are we going to get him out of here? Because there's not an ambulance service to just take him home.
Yeah.
And he's in so much pain, he's got to lay down. So it was kind of this ongoing problem solving. So I found a service for him to be transported home. And so he ended up, living and being on hospice for 18-ish days. But talk about people showing up and just leaning in. So it was just a time of every wall in my house being so full of love. These army guys showed up, like army brothers. That's what we still call them. Like these army brothers, a couple of them who I'd never met, the girls had never met, but they like blew up air mattresses, stayed upstairs, like stayed with us, rotated. A couple of them were here for, gosh, at least 3 weeks, if not a month. And again, normal version me may have felt like overwhelmed with, these are a lot of house guests, like, and there's people wanting to come stop by. But in that time period, it was so beautiful. It was so phenomenal and powerful in the way that love was shared and experienced. I think if they were on here with you and us, like, I think they would be saying the same thing because it was just like, you just can't recreate that. And so they helped walk me through and like walk over this threshold of life to death. And they were here, we were all in the bedroom as he took his last breaths and stuff. And hospice was different than I anticipated. Like in my mind, I was like, oh, we're going to share old memories and stories and listen to songs and maybe watch our wedding video. And I had romanticized or envisioned this version of hospice and end of life that was not accurate, because he was very in and out of being available for conversation. A lot of hallucination type stuff. I became a very good actress because he would wake up in the middle of the night, like having like these like almost panicky moments. He'd be like, honey, like go get the keys. You need to save the children. And these like I would have, and he would like wait for me to go. I would leave the bedroom in the middle of the night and bring back the keys and like jingle them because it was that real for him. And it just sort of like it was just very different. So I guess I just would love to share and speak on behalf of you. If there's conversations on your heart, if there's something you want to share with people, like let's make it our mission to start doing that now in the moment. Like send a voice message, send the email if it's uncomfortable, but people that have made impact in your life, or maybe there's areas of like gentle forgiveness that needs to happen. It's like I want to scream on the mountainside and say, please just lean into that because it is so valuable and it's so important because if you end up in a hospice situation where you think you're going to get to say things or ask questions and do all the things, like you might not. And why not just like say these things like through the process when someone can really benefit from that and write the letters and leave the notes and make the little videos for your kids or your family, like capture these everyday basic moments. Like those are the most beautiful things.
I wrote a song about that. It's called Whispers to the Sky. I made it for my mom. It ended up blowing up in like Portugal of all places.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, I was like, man, my mom's been in and out of a lot of serious health stuff. I never had the chance to say goodbye to my dad. It would have been a different story, even if I had had the chance, because it was a different relationship. This is my mama, raised me a single mother, did whatever was best in her power. And I said, you know what, before you can't hear me or understand me, I'm gonna sing you a song.
What a gift. That's
And so,
beautiful.
well, think of that. But no, I love that expressing ourselves is so important.
So important.
You never hear people regret, man, I wish I would have told them I love you less. It's always the
Totally.
opposite. I wish I would have
Yes.
heard my dad say he loved me. I wish I would have told my mom about this thing or whatever. Get that stuff out. Communicate when you
Yes.
can. You just, like you
Yeah.
said, you don't know. That's why today matters. No matter what
Yes.
day it is. Today matters.
100%. Yes.
Gosh, sorry.
Absolutely.
Got me on that.
Yeah.
That's so
I love that.
critical.
I
Yeah.
can't wait to listen to that song.
Yeah, Whispers to the Sky. It did better than I expected. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing. It's good. Keep it
Yeah.
going.
Well, the faith that I have, Bri, I was an agnostic to atheist by the time I made it early teens. And the faith that I have, when I looked back at it, the Spirit was able to talk to me through old conversations I had with my mom when I was a kid.
Crazy.
And yeah, there goes the stuff. But that's where that came from. That's where that faith was waiting. And it came in later in life and popped in there. And I could remember that voice. And so, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yep. Those little.
It's like it's always waiting for us just to like be available to like just, it's like that door is like never fully closed. It's just hinged open and we just have to like boop, be like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to walk through that.
Yeah.
And receive.
And for me, it was just having to let go of some anger. And the anger was in the way. It was like holding the door shut. So.
Sure. Yeah. Probably a protection mechanism at that point. Like,
sure.
Guarding.
That was my whole fighting back against the world was just that, just trying to protect a little kid inside, you know, a little vulnerable kid.
Totally.
And you just walked us through this entire journey. And one of the questions I asked is, or I usually ask is, you know, can you think of a time you were really down? Well, you covered that, and you covered how you walked through that door. I asked people how you find hope, and you've covered that. The most important question I ask in these, unless there's more story you'd like to tell, because I'd love to hear more story. But the most important question I ask is if you're looking at somebody who's at day one of the journey that you went on, because some people's death journeys are longer than others. Some are very short. Some are unexpected, and you're already having to deal with it before you ever knew it was coming. And your case can be extremely taxing on people to go through that long of a journey. But if you're talking to somebody somewhere in that journey of loss, of what's the number one most important thing to do, to grab onto? How do you protect yourself and make sure that on the other end you can live?
Well, I think for me, what I would probably want to speak into is just that piece of being all in and like all in for whatever that means for each person and to what capacity you're willing to offer the world. But with that being said, like I have a growth mindset and I'm probably addicted to personal growth and
that's good.
The desire to always like work towards my next level better self. And I'd want to share to people like, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how lonely it is, honestly, like for me too, I was never alone because Jesus was always with me and protecting me. So that's probably my number one, is that in the loneliest and darkest of moments, I was never alone. And there'd be times where I would maybe have to be journaling about that or talking to someone, or maybe a song would like help stir that up. But looking back, I mean, it is so clear to me how many ways I was protected and guided and probably held up. Like I read this cool book called The Veil, and this guy talks so clearly about like the spiritual realm and like what that might look like. And so when I think about that, and I just think like, oh, maybe Jesus is like right there holding me up to like help Mike do his wounds or his ostomy bags or whatever it might be, that it was actually like his hands through me. And I know that my version of faith might not be for everyone, but for me, that is like a pillar of where my hope was rooted in, and my desire to make the best of this life with Mike, to show up as my best self, that I was willing to commit to being all in. But it was probably really because I had committed to like surrendering to what God's plan was. And that is hard because that was not my plan. I mean, I was still praying. I'd still be praying like, God, please heal him. Please cure this. Please have a radical miracle waiting for us. But the truth is, it's like I was experiencing radical miracles. They just weren't what I thought I was praying for. Like, I had miracles because my neighbors came over during Christmas and put up all of our Christmas lights. I had miracles because friends paid for a house cleaner so that I could just like love on Mike. I had miracles of like moments with the girls and a babysit, like things can look differently than we anticipate, but there's still that choice to experience all of it, even the hard stuff.
I think that you are a hero, no matter how lifted and guided that you are. You have
Thank you.
spread so much light to the world, and you didn't do it because it was really easy and fun. You did it because life did not deal you what most people would consider a fair hand of cards. And yet, as I talk to you, I think you're grateful for the cards you were dealt
I am.
and the growth that you got from it. It comes through amazingly, and that's that kind of that's that warrior mentality. I mean, it really is. We teach positive psych to soldiers and to warriors. That's what we want them to embrace. Like, okay, war sucks, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to be there, you might as well survive it. And if
Yeah.
you're going to survive it, you might as well thrive out of it.
Totally. Heck yes.
And if you're going to thrive out of it, take a whole bunch of people with you and help lift them up too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you've done. So you're certainly an honorable like member of the special forces with
Thank you.
your mental health inclinations, and you're humble and you put it where it belongs, which is with the Lord that carried you on that journey.
Yeah.
But you have to go willingly.
Yes, totally. And on people's own times too. Yeah. It was like I would say, what do I want to say? 6 months ago, I would be telling people up until that point, like that was the hardest thing that I have ever done, and the most honorable, beautiful thing I got to experience, like walking alongside him to heaven on his, like, right before he died. There was a couple of moments where he was super out of it, but there was a moment where he like looks up and he's like, "Oh, such a joyful noise." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what are you seeing?" Like, and I know that line like is in a Bible verse, and I'm like, "Tell me, what are you seeing?" But he couldn't relate. I was like, "Wow." And there's another time where he's like reaching up towards the ceiling, and kind of said, a few other things. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And it clicked in that moment. And this feeling or experience, I was thinking, wow. In that moment, I thought to myself, for all this time, I'm thinking, Mike's going to be missing out on what the girls are doing and what we were going to build. And like, Mike's missing out, blah, 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 blah. Then in that moment, as he was like having what I feel like were these like in-betweener moments before dying, I was like, and I just started having tears. I was like, I've got it so backwards. I'm missing out on what he's going to experience. And it just kind of rocked my world, because up until then, I mean, I still would prefer to stay on earth for as long as possible. But this knowing of, wow, I actually am going to be so brilliantly surprised by what I get to experience once I get there. And that's going to be magnificent. And So it kind of like eased up my, I don't know, that version of sadness or anger towards this separation that was going to be happening, and kind of recognizing, oh, how selfish of me. Like, he's going to be experiencing something bigger and beyond that I can even wrap my head around.
And there was a younger version of me that used to argue about the value of suffering, because I think in a small way, our generation was kind of raised like, yeah, suffering's bad.
Yeah.
What was it? What doesn't kill me
Yeah.
makes me weaker, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What doesn't kill me makes me weaker, and we should avoid it. And that was the biggest thing that held between me, like scientifically, like, how could you have faith when there's suffering? And then I was watching my wife's grandma die. Yeah, go through her end of life. It was very traumatic, very painful right at the end. And I had a similar kind of just image. There's this little grassy knoll just outside of where she lay dying. And I just felt this wash, like this pain that we think is so just miserable, and how dare we, how could we, forgotten in an instant, just forgotten in an instant, just completely non-substantial in the overall scheme of things.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's always been something that has buoyed me as well. And I had to come to terms with my maker in Iraq. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to figure this one out, because is today the day? Maybe today's the day.
Right. Yeah.
Figured that card out. But you walked alongside of it. Like you said, we all hope to be on this earth as long as possible.
Yeah.
But, for me, there'll come a time where if I'm still rolling around here, it'll be time. I think we all eventually hit our time.
Totally. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I got to tell you, this is some serious wisdom that you've dropped. I hope this has the chance. I always pray that these episodes have the chance to reach just the right person. So I will be messaging you. I will have people reach out to me that want to maybe potentially connect. They're going through something similar. I hope you don't mind if I reach out to you. Okay.
Yeah, I don't mind.
Thank you for sharing your story. Do you have anything else to share with the hundreds and hundreds of people?
Yes. There's thousands of followers. Well, I guess I just I don't know. I mean, like, it's like layer 2 of grief that we could go into and or not. Like, just life has such a funny way of continuing to be the teacher, and I just continue to be the student, and recognizing, like, gosh, there's so much value in remaining curious and trying to be my best self, and always working towards like my own wellness and personal growth. So I don't know. I mean, I messaged you, but I'm happy to
know layer 2, and
Mhm.
I almost think layer 2 could be its own show, and I'm at the edge of my seat of wanting to hear how that went, because to the world out there, she dealt with something else at the end of all this that took my breath away.
Mine too.
The day you mentioned, well, yeah, certainly not more about me. So if you'd be willing to come back and have a second chat, I'd be certainly willing to help you unpack that and talk about something that I think will really make people think about who they are inside and what relationships mean. It's a doozy.
Yeah, we could dive into like legacy and like honor. And I mean, just like all life stuff, but it's also like continued inner work of forgiveness too. Like, that's a beautiful life lesson.
I'm super looking forward to it. So I hope you're willing to come back and talk about that.
I'd be happy to.
And there's actually one thing I'm going to try to do early next year is panel up all of the heroes that have taken the time to appear. So please look forward to a potential invite for that. I would love to get the 11 of you together this year that are spreading a message of hope and survival to people.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you so much for your time and thinking of me.
Yeah.
Great
No,
to see you.
are you kidding? I had these list of heroes, and you were.
Aw.
I don't remember when I started the conversation with you, but it could have been
it's been a while
long.
now.
Yeah. Because I had this list of heroes that really brought the genuine article out there, and in particular already proved that they're willing to share their suffering for the benefit of others, and that's been you. So thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Yep. And
Thank you.
I look forward to talking to you again, and I hope you're, as always, I know you're hanging in there just fine, but if you ever need anything, do feel free to reach out here as well.
I
Thanks,
appreciate
Bri,
it.
for your time.
All right. Love you.
Take care. Yep.
Bye.
Bye-bye.